Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Career Chronicles podcast. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited to have those of you joining us live and those of you watching after the fact. Happy to have you all here. My name is Sloan. As always, I am your host of the podcast, and we are joined by my friend Kristi, and we are so excited to chat with you guys today about inspiring girls and young women in tech. I do want to give folks a few seconds to trickle in case anybody else is joining us live. And so while we do that, I'll just quickly give an intro into the podcast for those of you who are watching for the first time. Career Chronicles was born out of this idea of wanting to help organizations better recruit and retain women in technology, but of course, across all industries. And that's been something that's been apparent as I've talked to professionals in other fields, that there's still room to grow and improve in the ways that we support women professionally and make sure that we have the same opportunities as men to advance in our careers. Kristi has done a great job in her career, and we'll hear more obviously, but has done a great job of giving back to younger women and helping them get into the field of tech. So that became apparent from our first conversation, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm super excited. I also want to take a quick minute to thank our sponsors. Spyglass Partners is a staffing firm that you can reach out to for both your project-based and full-time hiring needs in IT, finance and accounting, supply chain, and executive searches. Also want to thank my additional sponsor, Merit Media, that has helped support the podcast and get us up and running on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So you can find us there, as well as YouTube and LinkedIn, of course. So we'll go ahead and dive in. I want to take a moment to introduce Kristi. She is an AWS Serverless Hero and a principal software engineer at Liberty Mutual Insurance, where her focus is serverless-first cloud enablement and engineering education. She has over 7 years of industry experience, holds an MS in electrical and computer engineering, and is very passionate about promoting women in technology. That became very apparent to me in our very first conversation, Kristi, and I'm so excited that you're going to tell us more about that. She is an established speaker, appearing in over 40 conferences, podcasts, panels, and more. We were just talking about some conferences she has coming up in Europe very soon, which is exciting. Kristi founded the Serverless Denver meetup and currently co-organizes the Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Belfast AWS user groups and CDK Day. Outside of work in the serverless tech space, I don't know how you have any free time out of that, but outside of that, she can be found reading a good book in her tiny home, enjoying a poke bowl, or jet setting across the world, which sounds like you're about to do some of that coming up.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Thanks for having me on today. I obviously love talking everything. Women in careers, women in tech is a big passion of mine, and obviously travel and stuff too. So I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. Before we dive in, tell everybody where you're going shortly, if you can share.
Oh yeah, if you're in the area or want to look out for the recording afterwards, so I'll be speaking at PyCon Italia in the coming weeks, so at the end of May. So I'm super excited to talk a bit about lambda power tools and working with Python in lambda functions. So if that's your jam, definitely feel free to check it out, or I'll post the recording afterwards too. So can't make it to Italy.
Yeah, if you can't make a flight over to Italy, if you're in the States and don't want to plan a trip to Italy, I mean, it's a great excuse to go to Italy, and it's in Florence, right? So
Yes,
it's a great,
it
excuse to go. So that's a great plug. If you're able to share the recording on your LinkedIn, I'm obviously going to tag you when I reshare this so folks can find it there, which is awesome. So Kristi, tell us a little bit about how we got connected and a little bit about, what got you here career-wise.
Yeah, so actually, Sloan was reached out to me through our contact, Chris Williams. So he and I co-organized the Portsmouth AWS user group meetup. So he's an awesome guy and great connection. So we connected through that, and she said, "Hey, I've got this cool podcast thing that I'd love for you to join." And then we just headed off and chatted about all things, career and women in tech related. So I've been very passionate about technology for a very long time now. It actually started in high school when I got really excited about a opportunity outside of my normal day-to-day coursework, and took a online class for AP Computer Science, and was like, hey, I
Cool.
think that this is something that I really like, but I want to be a little bit more hands-on with it. And I ended up applying to schools for computer engineering. So I quickly jumped into the engineering world. I went to Roger Williams in Rhode Island. So it was a very not really a technical focused school. So it's not like, it was a very small program, which I absolutely loved. And we had a ton of women, and we had a lot of like really great groups like Society of Women Engineers, IEEE, and a lot of great spaces where we could work with other women. So I started attending conferences through that, and started going to like the SWE national conferences and our local ones, and just meeting tons of people. And I loved it. And that's actually how I met
Yeah.
Liberty and started getting involved with them. And then when I started full time, I just kind of continued on that trajectory, working with a lot of women and a lot of girls in tech.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to dive into that, but one thing I wanted to ask you about. So my background is in higher education.
Hmm.
So I used to be an admissions counselor and would review the applicants who applied to the university that I worked for. So thinking about AP curriculum is something that is second nature to me. And so you mentioned your AP computer science course. Is that something that was kind of readily available? Is that something that a lot of your fellow female peers were taking advantage of, or were you kind of the anomaly in that? Because that just wasn't my high school experience. But what I know is that everybody's high school experience is different, based on geography and opportunities and access and all of those things. So what was that like for you and your community?
Yeah, it was definitely an anomaly. So I'm from a
Okay. Yeah.
small rural area in New Hampshire, to add
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
context there. So we didn't have
Yeah.
many AP courses available. We did
Right.
have a unique opportunity with a program called Project Lead the Way. So we actually had a bunch of like high school level intro to engineering sort of classes that
Yeah.
I was able to take advantage of. But I was one of the only women in a lot of those classes, and one of the only
Okay.
women who saw it kind of all the way through. And from that, we started a little robotics organization. And even in that, same thing, very small percentage of women. And then I thought I was going to be an architect for a while. I wanted to like design buildings. And then I did a class on that. And I was like, no, this is, this is not for me. I am not like that
Yeah.
artsy. And I had a free plot block, and I was like, well, I want to try something different. So I kind of started exploring what was available to me online. So it wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily offered through my school, but it was different than just doing a study hall, or trying to
Yeah.
work with other teachers or whatever. So I found the AP Computer Science, and I was like, well, I really enjoyed
I
the
did that.
engineering classes, so let me see what this is all about. And I ended up taking that. I actually didn't finish it. I got only half a credit through it, because it was a small study hall block.
It worked out though, because
It
here you
did,
are.
yeah.
It's
It
on the
piqued my
speaker
interest.
circuit for AWS.
Yeah.
So you made it all right without
Yeah.
finishing the course.
You
But I
don't
think
have to
that's such
finish
an
it.
you know, okay, kids listening, you do need to finish high school. You do need to take your courses, but if you don't get the AP course all the way done, you'll be okay. But
Yep.
it's such an important part of your story, and something that I like to draw attention to, that the opportunities and the information available to high school students or middle school students, whatever, young age group it is, can have the ability to lay the groundwork for your career. I mean, these things are important, and they could all be considered the stepping stones that got you to where you are now. And we don't know where you had been if you hadn't had that exposure. We don't know if you would have, jumped into this career path, or even been able to discover it. So I think that's so important. It's why we're having this conversation of, if we do want to increase opportunities for women in tech, and if organizations want more women in to work for them on the tech side, then they also need to be pouring into these opportunities for young women. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, to give back, to that community. I know you're working on a lot of different initiatives.
Yeah, and you definitely hit the nail on the head there. Like, we started to, so I do a lot of interviewing for my company. So a lot of new hires, a lot of our interns. And, that's one of the big things we hear, is that like, oh, we'd love to hire more women, but there's just not many that are coming through the door as applicants.
Yeah.
So, we kind of looked at this and said, well, what can we do to increase those numbers? So one of the initiatives that I work with is specifically encouraging girls to work in technology and the STEM fields. It's part of, my job. We can go into different schools or work with other organizations, Boys and Girls Club, Girl Scouts, like YMCA's, local schools, to inspire girls to pursue careers in tech, because a lot of it's just exposure. And we
Yeah.
started digging into the research. We found a huge drop off around the fifth and sixth grade age range. And we kind of hyper focused on that and said, okay, well, what's happening here that is, leading to a lot of girls that are dropping off and not being interested or not pursuing it in college or, sparking any interest in high school. What is that? So, we started really focusing a lot of our education efforts on that kind of age group and working with students to continue that interest and exploration and kind of say, hey, it's still okay to be interested in science and technology and math. Like, it's a great place to be. There's other women in this industry, and we'd love for you to join
Mm.
us. So we work with them on, we have a lot of fun little activities. Our really young group, we do STEM story times with. We do Hour of Code events with them, which is
Oh,
just like
love
an
it.
hour we can sit and work with them. You can even go to like Hour of Code. You can Google it and find different exercises and activities to work with. And then we have some things like microbits, so little boards that they can like have light up with LED lights and stuff. So you can start it so young, like a lot of the
Yeah.
if else and like algorithm thinking, you can apply at such a young age. And we're just working to continue that spark and that interest
Yeah.
and see that carried through to applying to colleges and getting your
Yeah.
degree and then starting to apply through the door. So it's a lot of, women in tech initiatives are awesome, but we need to start younger.
Start younger. Yeah, and I hear this all the time, and it rings true from my own experience that I was the student that was definitely into math and science in elementary school, and then around middle school, it just pivoted. I just didn't, I was gravitating towards my favorite teachers that were women that tended to be in the more social sciences, and just leaned that way, and had, didn't have the opportunity to meet any women in tech or STEM fields. And so you really do need those examples. You need to be able to look at someone and say, oh, Kristi's doing this as a career. I like Kristi. I want to do this. And so you need that. As you're talking to these young women, what are some of the common themes you're hearing? What are, like, whether it's positives or negatives, what are they saying about why they're excited about technology, what they like about it, versus, if you do have the chance to hear some of the challenges of why they might leave. Are you noticing any trends either way?
Yeah, I think for the most part, there's a lot of folks out there that love problem solving, right?
Yeah.
And I think and this is true for me definitely, and is what led me down this path is that the satisfaction of getting something to work, right? Like coding
Yeah.
it and actually running it, and it's frustrating sometimes, but you kind of get
That was
that
what was
sense
so
of
fun about math as a child,
yeah,
right? There
right.
was
You get that
one right
little
answer. Like, you could get to that one right answer. And it's
yeah,
like,
and you
that's the
get that
same
little
thing.
boost of serotonin from it. So
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot of creativity in technology too that you don't necessarily think. There's different ways to solve problems and think through things. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely seeing that as a huge positive that girls are really love doing that.
Yeah.
I think that some of the challenges that we start to see, and this gets into a little bit more of what I've worked on as well with mentoring a lot of college students and a lot of our, up and coming women in tech for internships and new hires, is that they get into these environments and exactly like you said, like whether it's high school or college professors, they're like, well, I'm surrounded by all men, like all my teachers are
Yeah.
men, like,
I just
and
don't
then they
feel
kind of
connected to them.
yeah, and then they kind of just feel like they're not being seen or heard.
Yeah.
And so we like bring a lot of prospective interns and new hires into a Women in Tech Summit every year. And
Mm.
they sort of meet each other and they're like, oh my gosh, there's more people like me, right? Like it's not just me alone. And it's disheartening at first because you hear from them like, they're freshmen and sophomores in college. So they're like, I don't know, I've been questioning whether this is the right path for me. Like, I'm having a tough time finding this like relatable. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily that they can't do the work or that they don't like it. It's
No.
just that they're feeling a bit lost, like they don't have that
Yeah.
community there. And even after like 3 days of working with us in this summit, like they all leave like with a ton of new friends, and they're like, all right, I feel better about this. Like I feel like I have people I can connect with and talk to about it, and like I'm not alone. And those are, the women that continue through with the programs and
Yeah.
stay on track with their majors and graduate with
Yeah.
their degrees in technology. So it's a huge thing. And even like
It
when I
is.
went to college, I heard from that most women that I know, it's an uncle or a dad or a family. It's
Mhm.
somebody that they knew that
Some
encouraged.
male.
Yeah, it's somebody that they knew though or related to. That's
Yeah.
how they heard about it. Like it wasn't really
Yeah.
through school pushing that as a career option or because of your interest. It was kind of like they had to know somebody to get into it. So I think that's the
Yeah.
other part of it is your relationships.
Yeah. Oh, you're making me think of so many things. I mean, the sense of belonging is huge, and it brings me back again to my higher ed background. I worked for the first year seminar for students in the first year of college, and did a lot of research on what allows students to retain from first to second year. And the number one factor for retention was sense of belonging more than
Mm.
anything else. It was just feeling that sense of I see myself here and I have made friends and I have built relationships. And I think the same is true as you're going along any path, whether that's career, but even to get into tech, you do have to persist through a lot of steps. You have to finish high school, you have to finish your undergrad, most likely, or some sort of technical training, a boot camp, or whatever it is. You have to persist through all these things. And if sense of belonging is key to that, then it's not just having the interest or the capability, it's also feeling like you belong there. And so, what I hear you saying is that increasing visibility of other women in that space is going to help students and young women feel like they belong. But I also hear you saying that there's a lot of male figures that have the opportunity here to do a better job at making sure young women feel included and seen in the space. So I think organizations have a responsibility to run programs that increase the visibility of the women like yourself who are already successful in tech, but they also have a responsibility to train our male allies on how to help bring up young women in this. So I think though it's twofold, and those are the things that organizations need to be thinking about. Do you have any thoughts on if an organization wants to implement some of these programs that you've had success with? Do you have any tips on how to get these off the ground?
Yeah, so we have a really healthy employee resource groups, and one of them is women in careers, and then a subgroup of that is women in tech. And then we started several years back now. We're about to celebrate, I believe, our 10th year anniversary with this
Wow.
program working with girls. But I was actually one of our founding members for the Boston group when I lived down there. So I've kind of been with them since the start, about 6, 7 years ago. And it really just there is a few things, but I think it's just having a passionate group of people that is willing to dedicate some time to working on this. And obviously with everything you need a little bit of budget to help fund kind of working with
Money. Yeah.
you need a little bit, right?
Gotta
I
have the
don't need that
money.
much, but a little bit to kind of start these programs. Things like Hour of Code are free, but some of our other
Yeah.
activities are paid for. You just like to offer transportation because we've done a mix of like hosting students on our campus and like bringing students in, which they love, and also
Oh
us
yeah.
going to them. So obviously in places like Boston, it's easier to
Transportation.
kind of travel to folks. And then we have some areas in New Hampshire and the Seacoast that we work with quite a bit. But there's partnerships everywhere because we work with parents, so like there's a ton of vested interest with because they're saying, oh, that's our kids, like we'd love for you to come into our classroom and work with them. So if you can dedicate, like even we've been running kind of monthly activities. So it depends on where you live. Some of the mix of virtual, some are in person. So it's just taking some time, a little bit of budget, and then being able to kind of work with these students. But we've had a massive footprint. We actually have an event coming up in 2 weeks that has 60 volunteers from our company going to help with
Yeah.
this, which is one of our biggest events. So it's been awesome. We're trying to kind of expand to be a global footprint and work with meet people where they are at outside of the office and virtually and in person. So
Yeah,
It's been great, and it's a lot of work from a leadership perspective. But if you just want to volunteer, it's such a low lift, and then you can track it as part of
that's what I was gonna
volunteer
say.
hours.
That's a low lift, and it's like a
Hmm.
great place to get started. And I
Yep.
think I'm hearing you say, focusing on your local community is a great way to get started from scratch too. Because like, if you're trying to tackle the world, obviously there is a global tech environment. You're going to Italy next week, and of course, there's opportunities globally, but just starting locally is a great way to just get kicked off. Find the schools in your area, and you
Yeah.
can
Schools,
probably
libraries, even community
libraries,
centers.
schools.
Yeah,
That's
we've been doing
very
like
low cost where you can go in and just
exactly.
just tell them about your company, tell them about the jobs. Like it's more like a career day kind of thing. That could be very low cost and very feasible, or even just vocally showcasing the women that do work in tech in your organization, giving them some visibility on your social media, your website, LinkedIn, whatever that might be. That can be great too. So I think there's a lot of things people can do that are cost effective.
Right.
Yeah. Well, part of my podcast has also been to talk about, not just building a pipeline of women in tech and recruiting more women into tech, but also about retaining the women who get here, because I know that there are glass ceilings that get hit. There are things that cause women to burn out, that the reasons are different than, men experience burnout too. But I think women experience it sometimes for different reasons. And so we've talked about some of those. You've been with your organization for almost 8 years. Has the opportunity to give back to the women in tech community, how has that played a part in keeping you invested and retained at your organization?
I think that's played a huge part. As I mentioned, like I've been pretty involved since high school, and college. That was a big thing for me, is being part of these organizations, and to be able to continue that in through my career has been incredible. I love working with
Yeah.
our employee resource groups and like having these communities, and it's almost like an extracurricular at work, right?
Yeah. It brings you
So
back to the high school and college
yeah.
days of like, I've got class, I got to go to work and code. And then it's like, and then after class, I've got to go to
Yep.
practice and do
Yep,
this.
exactly. Yeah, so I think it's definitely been a huge plus for me. I mean, that would definitely be something that I'd look for in any job going forward in my career.
Yeah.
And even if it wasn't there, I'd probably be motivated to start it, right? Because
Yeah.
you do. And I think part of it too is like the mentorship programs and stuff. I get such a sense of satisfaction of working
Yeah.
one-on-one with a lot of our incoming students and interns and new hires. So every year I tend to mentor at least two people. And it's just been awesome. And again, that's another thing that's so low lift. It's like once a month. But you feel
Yeah.
so connected to kind of be like, hey, what are you working on in class? And then it's
Yeah.
just so nice that they ask so many questions, like what's it like working in the corporate world? Like, what can I expect
Yeah.
coming here? Like, can you help me with this? Like, hey, I'm picking out classes next semester. Like, what would you suggest? And we can kind of have that dialogue and that connection. So I think those
Yeah.
things are awesome, and I just feel such a sense of satisfaction and progress when I can speak with other students and work with them.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that it's such a great representation for your organization to younger women who, when they are on the job hunt, this could be a great recruiting tool for them to want to work with you and work in an organization that supports these programs. So it just seems like it's a win-win all around in terms of investing in these women in tech programs, is that you're improving opportunities for women in tech, you're inspiring young women, but you're also increasing visibility of your organization. It's a recruiting tool. And then it's also on the back end, it's a retention tool. It's going to make your company culture even better. So I feel like these programs are such a great investment all around. And I imagine there's women that you've mentored that want to come work with you. You may already have. Have you recruited anybody through these programs?
Yeah, I would definitely say the mentorships are usually folks that are coming in for interns, and then
Internships.
a lot of
Yeah.
them do stay on. They
Yeah.
accept the time offer and they stay on, and I still see
That's
them
great.
every so often when I go into the office and
Yeah.
get to say hi. And it's great just networking internally in the company too, because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you went over to this department, like, hey, can you help me with this? Or hey,
Yeah.
I'm
It's
interested in that.
improving the cross-functional collaboration and
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
So it's
it's just
another way to stay
wins
connected
all
with
around.
those. Yeah, exactly. So it has been it's awesome. And even if they do, end up not staying here and moving on to something else, they still carry a lot of that with them and a lot of those connections. I actually just had somebody reach out to me that interned here with us and didn't end up staying, but wanted to do the grad program that I did so that we connected
Yeah.
over that. And she's like, hey, I remember you telling me about that. So it's a great way to just expand your network, work on your soft skills even too, like being able to
Yeah.
work with someone, with mentoring somebody, there's opportunities to, it's kids,
Professional
but stand
development.
up in front of people and talk more and, refine those social skills, sometimes your technical skills. So I agree with you. It's just wins all around.
Yeah, it is. Well, Kristi, I do want to ask you my last question that I ask everybody, and that is when or where have you felt most empowered as a woman?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I do think some of that is probably in more of my career because, as I kind of mentioned, you really feel like you can make a difference when you're working with a lot of these students. So I've definitely felt most empowered when I'm supported to do those things. So,
Yeah.
having that, feeling like even when I talk with my managers, in the past and stuff, it's always been a top priority for them too, right? Like they're like, we never want you to like have to feel like you need to cut back on working with these
Mm,
students because it's such important work. And it does factor into like, my day job and working with
yeah.
those folks. So it's, I definitely think that it's been in my career and being able to work in these circles with students and mentor and work with them because like I said, you do feel like you're making a difference, you're creating a community, you're giving back in a way that is somewhat low lift. And I
Yeah.
just feel like it makes it so much 10 times better when you're supported by others that can do that as well.
Yeah. Did you ever expect to get that from your career when I know you were younger when you found this interest in computer science and getting into tech, and obviously you had an inclination and a talent for that, and you probably just set out and like, I'm gonna be a software developer code. Did you think about, that aspect of, your career satisfaction having a lot to do with mentoring and giving back to others, or did that kind of just all unfold organically?
I'd say more of the latter. I mean, I didn't think because you're so focused on like getting the job, right? Like
I know. When
you're
you're
so
20, you're
focused.
just like, "I got a
Gotta get
job."
yeah, and
It's
you and
all
I
it's
see
such
that.
tunnel vision at that age. It's
Yeah,
like
and I
all you
see
can think
that
about.
all the time when I like when people are really on the fence about what they want to do or like, they're debating on like interns and where they're going to go full time and stuff. I said that because the folks that I graduated with, they've all ended up in great places too, but it was very different because I was able to, meet up with them again and be like, "Oh, it's awesome. Like there's all people my own age, like,
Yeah.
we and it's like working with Society of Women Engineers again with and they're all kind of like, oh well, we're the youngest in our company and like everybody else has kids or is married and it's
Right.
very different. So I was like,
Different
it,
stage of
it
life.
wasn't something I sought out, but I'm very glad that I was able to come to a larger company and I got that. It was an easier transition, I think, for me
Yeah.
to kind of jump into the space that had a lot of the same sort of support structures, just more on a career professional level and less
Yeah.
on a college level. And I mean, I even met my company now at a Society of Women Engineers like
Nice.
conference. They had a booth there,
Yeah.
and that's where I ended up doing my first interview and stuff. So I don't think I knew it then, but maybe subconsciously, that's what I was
Yeah.
seeking.
It made you feel that warm fuzzy on the inside that so like you
Yep.
said, subconsciously maybe led you in that direction. Well, for the young people listening and watching, definitely keep in mind that, adulthood is much more multifaceted than just your 9 to 5. I think
Mhm.
I got swept up in it in college too, thinking, what am I going to do in my job and my 9 to 5 and what are my career goals going to be? And there's so much more than the actual work of the job. There's the network that you build, the system of support, the opportunities to give back, the opportunities to grow and learn advance your skills and speak at conferences. Like, this opportunity for you to go to Florence next week and speak, these are all the things that make you flourish in a career and be able to stick with it for as long as you have and for many more years to come. And it prevents all that burnout. Joseph, as a final closing note, said adults don't do it. It's a trap. It's not what we're
All
trying to
that.
get across, Joseph. We're trying to say that it can be a beautiful thing. Kristi's obviously built a wonderful, sort of well-rounded professional life. And so I appreciate you sharing your insights with us today. This has been a fantastic episode. Anybody who has questions for Kristi, drop them in the chat and reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're happy to continue this conversation. And Kristi, thank you so much for your time today. It was great.
Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Good. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see y'all next time on the Career Chronicles. Bye.